Hello everybody, it's your boy Hawka, the Counter-Strike Scholar. Pickem's just dropped for the playoffs and I have a flight to catch tomorrow, so I'm going to make this quick because it's 2 a.m. here. I got to be up in the morning. Let's go ahead and check our Legend Stage picks, how we made it to this point. I put Cloud9 in 3-0, mainly because I just felt in my gut that their style wouldn't translate that well to LAN, and if it did translate well to LAN, I could have seen them 3-0ing. If it didn't, I could have seen them not making it. That's what happened. It was a toss-up for me between them and Furia, though, so I hope you weren't with me, because we got exactly 5 points with all these safe teams. I also think maybe looking back, I could have picked Liquid over Imperial. I think I probably underrated Imperial slightly, but we move on to the playoffs. I got some notes on my second monitor, so I can go ahead and go through these picks. Let's start with NIP versus FaZe. And I actually think there is some upset potential here, weirdly enough. The first thing to consider is I'm really unsure where the veto is going to go in this scenario. Like, both teams share a lot of the same maps, and so the picks could be very strange. I think it could just get really awkward in terms of getting comfortable maps for both teams, and that can sometimes create a really chaotic series where you win your opponent's map pick, maybe you just have close maps in general, but I do think overall, I'm still going to have to pick FaZe here for a couple of reasons. Firstly, Brolan has been very good for Nip. I've liked how he has adapted, but Rez, for example, struggled specifically in the series against Navi, and I think in general, his style of play relies on his aim being better than his opponents, and I think FaZe are one of the worst teams to go up against with that style of play. I would say Rez generally drops off against top teams, and that's going to take away a fair bit of the NIP firepower. Plopsky has been a bit better than normal lately, but I still think he's mostly pretty mediocre. And as I was saying, the maps could make it weird, but I think FaZe just have way fewer question marks across the board. They should also have a good AWP advantage. Even though S-Attack has been playing well at this event, I think having an AWP like Brokey makes a big difference over an AWP like S-Attack, especially at this stage of the tournament. And you also have to remember, FaZe are just a very experienced team. I think if you're feeling I actually think there is a case to be made for NIP here, just because the maps are weird. Like, I think NIP maybe pick Inferno or Overpass is maybe more likely. But they both like Inferno, but FaZe have been struggling on it a bit recently, so if they pick Inferno, that could get all kinds of dicey. But I think realistically, most people are going with FaZe here, and even though I think this is a little closer than most people are expecting, I still think FaZe will get the win. Moving on to Spirit Furia. Sadly, I don't know if there's too much to say about this one. I do think Furia are going to take it. You have to consider a couple of things here. Firstly, Furia are just by far the more experienced team, and they're not even that experienced of a team, but they're up against 2 players who are literally playing their first LAN on the Team Spirit side. And I also think the veto works out really nicely for Furia. They should get a very comfy pick with Vertigo, which is a map that Spirit haven't been tested on at the major, and it's not one that they generally seem to be too good at. So I already think that should be a really easy start for Furia. And then Spirit might be best off picking Nuke here, because they actually beat Furia on it in the best of ones. But they also could, I think, go for Ancient, and then that is another map which I think plays to Furia's strengths. And mainly, I think Furia get a really comfy map pick, but they also get to put their opponents up against a really uncomfortable style. And that is where the inexperience of Team Spirit could struggle, especially since their best players have been Patsy and Dexter. 2 players who I would say are best in these sort of slower paced games where they can outposition and outmaneuver their opponents. And I don't expect Furia to allow that to happen because they're just going to be going hyper aggressive all the time. I don't think that's going to allow Spirit to get comfortable at any point, so I have to go with Furia. Next, we have ENCE versus Copenhagen Flames, and honestly, this is kind of similar to the previous series, where I'm going to go with ENCE. They are somewhat similar to Furia in that they play this really aggressive style, which again should throw Copenhagen Flames off guard. And again, I think the veto is pretty nice for ENCE. They probably get to pick Mirage, which I think should be a pretty comfortable victory for them. That's a map they are really comfy on, and again, will happily play that aggressive style, which will shake Copenhagen Flames. Then I think Copenhagen Flames maybe pick Vertigo here, And I actually think Ents might sneak the dub on Vertigo and take this 2-0. They've been sneakily good on Vertigo lately, but even if it goes to a decider, which I think would be Ancient, despite that being a map that Copenhagen Flames beat Furia on, or sorry, beat Ents on 16-8 last time, I think that Ents' style will just make them uncomfortable, and the reason why they won that Ancient was their trades on the Copenhagen Flames side were really good, and I think those timings are going to be put off under the pressure of the big stage. Ents also don't have that much experience, and Hades has been a bit meh as an AWPer, and you also have to consider Dihar and Spinks have been really big hitters here. If they underperform, then there could actually be a chance for Copenhagen Flames. But I think it's more likely that the Ents players show up than the Copenhagen Flames. I also think they have the better veto, and so I have to go with Ents. Now we have probably the pick of the bunch, Navi Heroic. I'm actually kind of torn on this one. I think there is a real chance that Heroic could cause some sort of upset here. Let me tell you why. Firstly, I think Navi are just picking Mirage constantly right now. And while Heroic's Mirage hasn't been great lately, they play this pretty high variance style on Mirage where they will go for quite a few aggressive pushes, quite a few aggressive plays. Even on CT side, they like heavily grouping up and going for these wild moves that you don't normally see. And that could make things a little complicated for Navi, but I do still think Navi's proto-goals should carry them through for that win. There is a chance that Heroic could cause some sort of upset there though. Then Heroic have maybe an Inferno pick, maybe an Overpass pick. Navi did beat Nip 16-6 on Inferno, but I still think Boomich on Banana is a weakness that can maybe be exploited, and Boomich in general hasn't been playing that great lately. Heroic have been picking Overpass this event, but it's generally been a map that's been really tight for them, and they even lost it against Vitality. But then at the same time, it's an untested map for Navi, because Navi went 3-0. We haven't seen them on a bunch of maps, and so maybe that could be a good choice for Heroic. I think the issue for Heroic here is that Navi almost certainly get to decide what the decider map will be. I think it should come down to them either deciding whether they want to play maybe Nuke or Inferno/Overpass, depending on what Heroic pick. And I think that makes a big difference. Bit has also been playing ridiculous. His aim and his everything is on point right now. Like, if he keeps that up, he is genuinely an MVP contender. Simple still has more levels to reach on that big stage. Perfecto is low-key having an incredible tournament, considering the spots he's playing. He's played incredibly well so far. I do think Electronic has been underwhelming this year. I have not seen the star level from him. He's actually just been average, maybe even slightly below average at times. So that could be a concern. I still think Boomich is a bit of a weak spot individually, but there are also issues on the Heroic side. We know they have had their issues in big moments in the past. You also have to consider Cadian specifically, I feel, struggles in big games at times, and as an AWPer, you cannot afford to let that happen. And I also think Tassus is one of those players who relies pretty heavily on his aim, and I don't think you're going to do that well if you rely on your aim against Navi. So I think a couple of the Heroic players might drop off slightly. Navi should just have a bit too much class, but the one thing to consider is even at the Stockholm Major that Navi won, they got off to a great start. They went 3-0. They go through to the playoffs. And then they played a really close series against Vitality because you maybe just kind of get out of the groove of the game slightly. You have a couple of days off. It might take you a bit of time to get back into the sort of flow of it. And that means Heroic can maybe make this scary. So I actually think this is maybe one of the more likely upsets in this round, which I don't think a lot of people will agree with, but I still have to go with Navi. I assume their class will prevail here. FaZe against Furia, I'm not even going to mess about with this too much. I just think FaZe will be too good for Furia. I mean, realistically, Furia making it here was kind of due to them going up against shaky G2. And I don't even think the map veto is going to matter that much. I think FaZe should just be way too good for Furia. They just have way too well-rounded of a squad. I think this is a pretty bad matchup for the Furia guys. And then Ents versus Navi. The issue with this one is that assuming Navi have beat Heroic, Ents play somewhat similar to Heroic but have less experience. And I don't know if I really see this upset happening. The only way it could happen is, again, I am unsure what maps Navi are wanting to play. it seems like they're leaning away from Dust 2 in the vetoes I've seen. And so if they go ahead and try and pick like a Mirage in this series, I think that could get super sketchy, actually. And maybe there's a chance for Ents to like sneak a 2-0. But overall, I still think Navi should be slightly better across the board. And yes, I'm going kind of boring, but I've got to go with what I believe. And I believe it will be a FaZe versus Navi final. And this is where I think I have a pretty solid favorite. And for me, just with the way the veto goes down, I already think I edge that over to FaZe. Even though Navi, I think, should have the choice as to whether they want to ban first or not, both teams share the ban of Vertigo, and historically, Carrigan has been very good at being tricky in the vetoes. I also think that's going to help him against Nip, by the way, where there's a pretty big overlap in their map pool. But here against Navi, I don't expect FaZe to have to ban Vertigo. I think they'll just ban Navi's best map, probably Mirage, and then they'll force Navi into banning Vertigo themselves, which I think gives them a good leg up in the veto. Then FaZe have a few options for their pick. I think they could definitely go for like a nuke, for example, which has been good for them and Navi have been shying away from. And then I don't see what Navi are going to be comfortable picking if they go ahead and get Mirage removed in that first rotation. This is where I would love to watch these prior series, because we haven't got much data on Navi right now at this event. But I think they probably won't go for Dust 2. I don't think they're trying to lean into it, even though that's what they picked last time they played FaZe. I think they might go for like an Ancient or something. And if that's the case, I'm kind of concerned, because I think that could be a pretty close map. And then I think maybe the decider goes to Overpass, but honestly, I don't know enough about Navi's map pool right now. I think they have potentially got an advantage of leaving some of their map pool in the dark, and they could be sneaky strong on some maps. But right now, I just have way more data to prove to me that FaZe are going to win this major. I also think that, again, that veto edge will come through there. And I'm also not actually sure whether Boomich is a clutch caller. Because sure, you won that final against G2, but I felt like that was more G2 collapsing and him just doing a good enough job. But really, I think most in-game leaders could have been able to carry it through there. So I do think FaZe win this major. It is kind of a boring selection, so if you want to go a bit wild, NIP I think could actually upset FaZe in first round. I really think Heroic could too. I really think this will be a very close series, but I just don't have faith in Heroic in those big moments, sadly. But then again, Stown looks like he's a little more hungry, so that's the only thing that makes me think maybe it's possible, but I just don't think I believe in the rest of the players enough. I think this is the most safe Pickem to go with. And remember, a lot of people are already out in these earlier stages. So I think it's fine to go safe. You probably still got a good chance of getting a diamond coin that your friends won't have. That is my reasoning. I had to do this pretty quickly because it has just come out and I have to go to bed right now to go get my flight. But let me know if you agree, disagree. I want to know. I am interested if you think FaZe are going to win, as I do. Thank you guys for watching. My name's been Hawka, and I'll catch you next time.